When I saw this picture, something intense pulled me. My gaze was on a bare little tree. On a snowy winter night, he stood in front of a magnificent house. The sound buzzed throughout the picture. Suddenly, I felt strange whether this winter tree was him, the photographer, or me. This picture is from the British photographer, Harold Burdekin's photo book, London Night. He is little known as a photographer, but I seem to have figured out what the sound in the picture really is. Would you like to hear what it is?
Harold Benjamin Burdekin was born in England, Sheffield on April 19, 1899. His grandfather, Benjamin Burdekin, was a barrister of Broomfield. His father, Harold Pearson Burdekin, was a solicitor, at No. 20 Clark House Road, Sheffield, Broomhill. His mother, Lizzie Wigfall, married his father in April 1898. Harold Benjamin Burdekin was their first son, followed by Reginald Arnold Burdekin, and Florence Lucy Mary Burdekin. Burdekin lived in Ecclesall Bierlow, Yorkshire in 1901. He was educated at Rugby School and Tonbridge School. At the age of 17, he joined the Royal Field Artillery, and saw military service for the final years of the Great War. Returning to civilian life, he worked for his father's office as solicitor's clerk. But, his father's office was closed in 1919. After that, he sought several jobs such as bank clerk, wireless engineer. Finally, he trained for photography. In 1930, when he was 31, Burdekin won first prize in Morning Post competition for his Race Against Time. As a professional photographer, he took pictures such as fashion studies and portraits. However, his major concern was his own works. In particular, he was interested in night photography. It seems to him that the time of night has something like mysterious secret. In fact, his first prize was night photo titled Race Against Time. In 1932, Persai, a Hungarian-French photographer, published Paris de Nuit. The guy, who was at same age of 33 as Burdekin, depicted the sleazy after-hours life of the Paris streets. Persai framed his shots, so that small areas of light pierced large areas of blacks and shadows. Light reflected in wet streets and diffused by fog would define shapes within the dark. This contrast gave his printed images richness and depth. These pictures influenced Burdekin immediately. In 1834, Burdekin published his first book, London Night, in conjunction with John Morrison.
Now, I jump into London Night, to see what these pictures are talking to me.
The opening photograph in London Night is his Race Against Time, which shows the statue of Boudica racing in her chariot with the clock tower of Big Ben in the background.
The time in the picture is Kairos, in the Bible, the appointed time in the purpose of God, together with Chronos, sequential time as in the clock tower of Big Ben.
It is AD 61, at the time of the Roman conquest of southern Britain. Boudica is the Celtic queen. Boudica and her daughters drove round in her chariot, to all her tribes, before the battle against Rome. She asked them to consider,
"Win the battle or perish, that is what I, a woman, will do. You men can live on in slavery, if that's what you want."
"80,000 Britons, men, women and children, were killed. The Roman losses amounted to 400 dead. In 1902, a bronze statue of her riding high in her chariot was placed on the Thames embankment, next to the Houses of Parliament, in the old Roman capital of Britain. Also now, Queen Boudica, who fought to keep Britain free, resurrects in the hub of a Celtic cross.
Then, guardians of the city appear. The journey begins. It's an indigo night. In front of the gates, I reflect on the letter of the invitation from John Morrison.
She is mystery, fantasy, dream, the unsolved riddle, unguessed secret. She is the mother of mysteries, the keeper of the ring keys.
By the end of this journey, can I solve the secret they told me? Here, around the 6th century, as a Celtic militant, King Arthur, who repelled the intruder, the Saxony, died.
Her darkness is the darkness of the womb, warm, pulsating with the myriad forms of life. From the hidden depths springs the bud whose flower is called light. This is the eternal journey, the everlasting sojourn. She is the beginning and the end. From her all come, to her all return.
There is another London, to live for good. Snow had fallen. It is the day of judgment.
All I know that she is here. The bud has broken and the flower is full. Yes, I can see the rose petals unfold. Will my eyes record the moment of the consummation?
I think once again, why Burdekin and Morrison record London Night. Suddenly, a woman to whom they dedicated this photo book comes to mind.
On the afternoon of Sunday, April 27, 1921, a War Memorial Committee in Comrie unveiled a monument to recognize their loved ones who had been killed in the war. The memorial contained 46 names. With a donation of £450, a beautiful Celtic cross was purchased from the Army and Navy stores in London. Mrs. Walter Jones of Aberruchel was the donator of £450 for the memorial. The monument bears the inscription,
"To the glory of God, and in proud and grateful remembrance of the men of the parish who fought and fell for right and freedom in the Great War."
Lasses a lilting before dawn o' day.
London Night is not a mere night photograph. This is a promise for London lovers in Britain who has produced many fierce, noble warriors down the ages, who have fought to keep Britain free. That is, death is not the end. It is the new beginning. London Night is here. It is the past, the present, and the promise of that to come.
Burdekin published a number of very successful books of his work in the following years. In A Child's Grace, Burdekin illustrated 30 fine monochrome photographs of children with short verses of Mrs. E. Rutter Leatham and Dr. Ernest Claxton, encouraging them to thank God for everything, concluding by thanking God for His great love.
Thank you for the clothes we wear. Thank you for the steps we take. Thank you for your love so deep. Thank you, God, for everything.
In 1938, he published Secret, a photo book illustrating biblical text. Ben is a charming story of Ben, a brewery horse who is retired to the country after years of pulling drays on London's hard streets, calls him to develop problems with side bones. In 1939, Burdekin became a founder fellow of the Institute of British Photographers. He contributed to many technical journals, including a book of Zeiss photographic equipment. His work was highly regarded, and featured in international exhibitions. And, he was married with Mary Aylwin Ovenden. During the Second World War, Harold Burdekin became a fire guard. It was the London night of 22nd of July, 1944. Suddenly, the growling noise of the V-1s was heard overhead. Both, he and Mary, were killed by a flying bomb that struck Reigate. He and Mary were buried together at Sidlow Bridge Emmanuel Churchyard, Sidlow, Reigate, and Banstead Borough, Surrey, England.
Standing in front of their grave, all of a sudden, I realize what the sound is from the pictures of London Night. Burdekin took London Night of Kairos, in honor of the British who gave their lives to keep Britain free. In addition to that, he might have taken his own death for his country, to come 10 years later. If so, the sound in his picture I heard may be my song of the flowers of the forest to be played on Big Ben's time tonight, in memory of that midnight on July 22, 1944. That is the prayer of praise I will sing for him now, as Burdekin shows me the secret of the picture. The secret of photograph would be that a picture records simultaneously all memories of the past, the present moment, and that day to come.
Surrey Fire and Rescue Service have recently unveiled a new memorial to those who lost their lives in service during wartime. And Harold Burdekin is named among the Second World War fire guards.
The flows of the